Hey, what's going on, everyone? Xavier here, and welcome back to another Make Academy lesson. If you're just joining us, I'm documenting my journey from complete beginner to running my own AI automation agency. I'm following a 3-phase plan to get me there, but it all starts with workflow automation. That's why we're speeding through these lessons. We just started the basics section, where we learned about search and action modules. Today, I'm covering units 4 and 5 of the modules, scheduling, and bundles course. We're learning about triggers and scenario scheduling. If you want the full breakdown of my business plan, I'll put that video up there, as well as in the description below. But with that being said, let's jump into today's lessons. All right, so here we are in Unit 4, Introduction to Triggers. Welcome to the 4th unit of Make Basics. So far, you have learned about blueprints and expanding on a few different module types. Now we're going to explore trigger modules. These were covered briefly in Make Foundation, but we're expanding on them further in this lesson. Click Next. Trigger types. What is a trigger? A trigger is the first module within your automation. It is the first action that launches the whole scenario. Think of it as the referee blowing a whistle to start a football game, or the starter beginning a race by waving a flag. Note that each scenario can only contain one trigger. What is a polling trigger? A polling trigger will execute your scenario at intervals. For example, we have used the weather app in previous exercises, which performs the action get current weather. Once the interval is reached, for example, every 15 minutes, the scenario will be executed. A polling trigger can be identified by the clock icon, which is this. What is an instant trigger? As the name suggests, an instant trigger will notify Make of any changes as they occur, rather than waiting for the scenario to execute and check for any changes. A big advantage to an instant trigger is that it will execute the scenario immediately as soon as data arrives. Note that modules which contain an instant trigger can also be configured to run in the same way a normal polling trigger does. Compared to the polling trigger example, an instant trigger would notify your scenario of the response the moment a user completes a form. Identifying the trigger type. We've looked at how to identify the trigger type visually from the clock/lightning icon displayed on the previous page, but there are a few other ways to identify a trigger type. Okay, so we have the action polling. Trigger modules will usually be identifiable as a trigger when you add them. However, if it does not explicitly say it's a trigger and is, for example, an action/search, etc., then this will always be considered a polling trigger. So I guess basically it's saying the only way to identify is if it's a instant trigger is the little lightning, like right here, it's a clock. But if it was like a lightning bolt, it would represent a instant trigger. I'm pretty sure. Next one says triggers polling with a little acid. Some modules will be tagged with the word acid. This tag indicates that the module supports the rollback feature. We will cover rollback later. For now, think of rollback as an action that can be voided if there is an error in the scenario. If a module does not have the acid tag, the action cannot be undone if an error occurs when the scenario executes. For example, if a scenario containing send an email executes and encounters an error, if an email has been sent prior to the error, there is no way to unsend it. The example provided here is therefore a polling trigger, which supports rollback. Pretty self-explanatory. Then we have instant triggers. An instant trigger will be tagged with the instant tag. Its purpose is to execute the scenario as soon as data arrives. Note that an instant trigger can also contain the acid tag. Another way to identify this is by adding the module at the start of your scenario. If the lightning icon appears on the tag, then this is an instant trigger. Yeah, like I was saying before. They don't have a picture of the lightning symbol, but it's, it'll show up in front of the, instead of the clock on the first module. All right, click Next. See an instant trigger in action. The scenarios in the Make Foundations/Basics use case both start with polling triggers. For this exercise, you will use an instant trigger. Create a new scenario and name it Make Basics Custom Webhook Demo. Add a module and type webhook and select Custom Webhook. Have you noticed the instant trigger label? All right, so we're actually creating a new scenario, and at the top right is create a new scenario. It wants us to add a webhook, which is right here, and we're adding a custom webhook. And now you can see that here on the first module, or the only module, is the little instant trigger lightning bolt here. So I'm just gonna make sure to rename this. Next slide. Usually you would be prompted to add a connection here, but a webhook works differently. Click add and type make basics demo for the title. You will notice that a hyperlink is generated. Click the copy address to clipboard option. We are kind of configuring this and naming it make basics demo. So I'm gonna go into this module, create a webhook. Webhook name is make basics demo and save. And it wants us to copy this address that we have here. So copy address to clipboard, and that's it for now. So now we're gonna go to the next slide. Click run once. You will notice the lightning icon starts to rotate. This means that your scenario is running and is waiting for a response from the webhook. Within your browser, paste the copied link from the webhook and visit it. The page within your browser will display the word accepted. The important thing to notice here is that your scenario has now finished running and has generated a bundle. Okay, so we're gonna go and follow these instructions. It wants us to save this and click the run once. Now the webhook is waiting for our, since it's an instant trigger, it's constantly in this standby mode until the action is triggered, which in this case, it is a link that we have to, basically once you go to that website, is when it will activate. So I'm gonna open up a new browser here and paste the webhook that we copied, and then just search and see it says accepted up here. And that just means that it worked out. So if we go back to our scenario, you will see that it is no longer loading and that we actually generated a bundle here, and the bundle is empty. There's nothing in there. But so this just shows that once you have an instant trigger on your module and you run it, it's waiting for information. Now we can go to our next slide. The bundle itself will not contain any information because we haven't specified those fields. This will be explored in a course featuring webhooks. But the crucial lesson to learn here is that rather than waiting for data at a set interval, an instant trigger allows you to retrieve this information and execute your scenario the second the data arrives. This concludes this brief exercise on instant triggers. Cool. Yeah, so just like I explained, a polling trigger will activate your scenario and at intervals depending on whatever you have it set to. Instant trigger will wait for the information to arrive, and then it will start your scenario as soon as that is triggered. So now we're gonna click next. Examples of triggers with the same scenario. Let's review a very basic comparison of the same use case using an instant and a polling trigger. All right, so I'm gonna click instant. For instant, PayPal has been configured to execute the scenario as soon as the module is activated, when data arrives. Once PayPal received a notification, the scenario is launched and the mapped data is passed to Slack, okay? And then we have polling triggers. PayPal has been configured to execute the scenario once per hour. Every hour, Make checks whether some notifications came to PayPal. If there are some, the data is passed to Slack and the number of operations is equal to the number of notifications. If there are no notifications, no data is passed, and the number of operations is 1, because the 1 from the source module. All right, click next. That's the end of the unit. Cool, real quick and easy one. So now we know how to tell the difference between a polling and an instant trigger, how to identify each trigger type, seeing an instant trigger in action, and how trigger types can impact the same scenario. So now we can go on to the 5th unit, which is scheduling your scenario, which I'm curious on what we're going to, I'm gonna mark this test as complete, what we're going to cover in this course, because we already kind of went over scheduling, and I think it was probably in the last course of the foundation section, but yeah, I'm sure this is more in depth or just more specific information. So we're just gonna get right into this. Welcome to Unit 5 of Make Basics. Now it's time to explore another Make feature, scenario scheduling. It allows you to manage the time periods of the scenario execution. By the end of this unit, you should have an understanding of every scheduling option and its impact on both your scenario and your operations usage. We'll explore a few different use cases to illustrate each scenario. Click next. A quick recap of scheduling. Scheduling is what determines the frequency of when and how often your scenario is activated in Make. There are many options, so it's important to ask yourself these questions before choosing the right option. How often do I need my scenario to run? How soon do I need the data from my scenario? Am I on the right plan to facilitate these needs? Over the next few pages, you will revisit scheduling in greater depth and look at a few use cases for each option. Click next. How to schedule your scenario. There are two ways to access the scheduling controls for your scenario. To open the schedule settings, do one of the following. You can activate scheduling by clicking the icon in the lower left corner of the Make user interface, which is this little clock and every 15 minutes button here. Or you can click the trigger icon in the first module of your scenario, which is the little clock. Or I believe you can change it by clicking the lightning if it's an instant trigger as well. So click next. Scheduling options. To access your scheduling options, select the drop-down next to Run Scenario. You will be presented with all options available to you. So you can see that if I click on this little icon here, I can see the different types of intervals. Immediately is the instant trigger, which is why it has this little lightning symbol. But if I go to at regular intervals and save it, it'll change to the little clock symbol, right? And it actually has some kind of explanation for each one of these. So I'm gonna click on these different intervals. So for immediately, note that the immediately option is only available when you select an instant trigger. As you explored in the previous unit, triggering a scenario immediately is massively powerful for when you need to access your data as soon as it arrives. At regular intervals, the lowest regular interval you can use is 1 minute. Note that on the free Make subscription, the minimum interval between scenario executions is 15 minutes. Advanced scheduling options can be used. For example, you may want your scenario to execute every 10 minutes, but only within working hours. For example, 9 to 5. Advanced scheduling will be explored on the next page. So you can set it for your work hours too. Once. Selecting the once option allows your scenario to be executed just once, according to the chosen date and time, every day. As the name suggests, this will execute the scenario every day. Make uses your organization's time zone to set the scenario execution time. For more information on this, click here. This can be changed within Profile, Time Zone Options, Scenarios, and My Organization. This is ideal for scenarios that only need to be checked once per day, as well as saving on the operations consumed. By toggling the Show Advanced Settings button, you are able to specify a start and end duration for this scenario to run in, e.g., run this scenario every day for a 2-week period. Days of the week. Days of the week is for scheduling the scenario to execute once on a specified day. This is for scenarios that may need to only be used within a Monday through Friday work schedule. Advanced settings allow indicating a range of days during which the scenario is executed. So I'm assuming you can just do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or you can do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, skip days by using this days of the week option. Days of the month. Scheduling your scenario to run on days of the month is useful for collecting data / sending communications at set intervals. For example, send outgoing emails containing a task for your staff on the 1st of the month. Send a follow-up reminder on the 10th. Send a nudge for users who have not acknowledged the task on the 15th. Now we have specified dates. Specified dates is very similar to days of the month. However, it gives you even more control on the specific days / months you want the scenario to execute. This would be perfect for a marketing campaign where you know the exact dates ahead of time in which you would want to send out communications. On demand. The on-demand function is used at your own leisure. Selecting this option will not execute the scenario until you open it and select Run Once. Ideal for a use case when you need to execute the scenario just once on demand. So I'm gonna click Next. Advanced scheduling. On the previous screen, you were provided with a brief overview of all scheduling options. It was noted on regular intervals. You are able to add another layer of control, which we will now explore. Open your Make Basics use case scenario within Make and select the schedule settings icon. If you need a reminder, click the image to view a demo of this. It wants us to open up the scheduling settings here by clicking the icon and then the advanced settings. So we can just open it here and then go to the advanced settings. Next slide. Under Run Scenario, make sure that at regular intervals is selected. Type in 60 under minutes, click the Add Item button. You will notice that the settings screen has expanded. This will allow you to define specific time intervals for when you want your scenario to be executed. This can be a period of hours, days, weeks, and months. So yeah, under advanced scheduling, you'll click add item, and then yeah, you can get more specific in that portion. I'm gonna click next. Click into time from. You will be prompted with a window that allows you to select the time. Here you can also manually type the time in an hour, minute format. For the purpose of this exercise, map the time from at 9 a.m. and the time to at 5 p.m. So you can either just click on the arrows, or you can just type it in like that, and it'll, well, obviously with the little colon in there, but yeah, you can type it in, or you can just use the arrows. For now, it wants this. Oh, and you can also click on the little numbers here. So if you click on the numbers, you can just, click them a little bit faster, so you don't have to like keep clicking on the arrows. So it wants us to have them for 9:30. So we'll just have 9:30 and then 5 p.m. And then I'm gonna save it. And then it's just asking if I want to activate the scenario. I'm gonna click not yet. Next slide. Under days, select Saturday and Sunday only. For months, select February and click save. Well done. You have configured your scenario to execute on every Saturday and Sunday in February between 9 and 5. What makes this function so powerful is that you can set up your scenario to be active during multiple periods of time, within hours, days, weeks, and months. Yeah, so you can be really specific with this stuff. Like whatever your scenario is set for, whatever it's doing for you, you can set it to be executed at the exact times that you need. And if that time or those times aren't working, you can always just go in here and change them again and be as specific as you need to be. And click next. That's the end of the unit. Now that we're done with this unit, we know the different options available within scheduling, the impact this will have on your operations usage, and advanced scheduling for regular intervals. Short lessons for today. Didn't even really do anything in the scenario. I mean, we actually just created a new scenario just to see the triggers. But yeah, not too crazy, not too advanced stuff here in this lesson, but still pretty important for what we're trying to accomplish, right? But that's going to be it for today's video. If you found any of this interesting or you want to see more, please feel free to drop a like, comment your thoughts, or hit that subscribe button. That's going to be it from me for today. I hope to see you in the next one. Take care.